Marcus Thompson had always been the class clown. At 22 years old, he thought he was funny, clever, and completely unstoppable. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, Marcus spent his days making people laugh with his silly pranks and wild ideas. He worked at a local restaurant where he entertained customers with his jokes and funny stories. One summer, Marcus saved enough money for his dream vacation to London, England. He had always wanted to see the famous Buckingham Palace and all, the royal guards in their tall black hats. Marcus packed his bags with excitement, but he also packed something unusual, his collection of hot sauce bottles. Marcus loved spicy food and never traveled anywhere without his favorite sauces. When Marcus arrived in London, he felt like he was in a movie. The big red buses, the old buildings, and the accents made everything seem magical. He stayed in a small hotel near the palace and spent his first day walking around, taking pictures of everything he saw. The city was so different from his quiet hometown. On his second day, Marcus decided to visit Buckingham Palace. He had heard about the famous guards who stood perfectly still no matter what happened around them. These guards wore red uniforms and tall black hats, and they never moved or spoke while on duty. Marcus thought this was the perfect opportunity for one of his pranks. As he walked toward the palace gates, Marcus pulled out a small bottle of his hottest sauce from his backpack. He had been carrying it around London, adding it to every meal he ate. The sauce was so spicy that it made his eyes water just from smelling it. Marcus looked at the royal guard standing at attention near the gate. The guard was a young man, probably around Marcus's age, standing perfectly straight with his rifle by his side. His red uniform was spotless, and his black hat sat perfectly on his head. Marcus thought the guard looked too serious and needed to lighten up. Without thinking about the consequences, Marcus approached the guard with a big grin on his face. He unscrewed the cap of his hot sauce bottle, and before anyone could stop him, he squeezed a stream of the burning red liquid right onto the guard's pristine white gloves. The hot sauce splattered across the guard's hands and uniform. Marcus expected the guard to break character, maybe laugh or at least react in some way. Instead, the guard remained completely motionless, even as the spicy sauce began to burn his skin. Marcus stood there for a moment, waiting for a reaction that never came. Suddenly, Marcus heard heavy footsteps behind him. Several police officers were running toward him, their faces serious and angry. Tourist cameras were flashing, and people were pointing at him. Marcus realized that what he thought was a harmless prank had turned into something much bigger and more serious than he had ever imagined. The police officers grabbed Marcus by his arms before he could even think about running away. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. The hot sauce bottle fell from his hands and rolled across the ground, leaving a red trail behind it. "Sir, you're under arrest for assaulting a member of Her Majesty's Guard and disturbing the peace," one of the officers said in a stern British accent. Marcus tried to explain that it was just a joke, but the officers weren't interested in his explanations. They put handcuffs on his wrists and led him away from the palace. As Marcus was being taken to the police car, he looked back at the royal guard. The young man was still standing perfectly still, even though the hot sauce was clearly burning his hands and had stained his beautiful red uniform. Other guards had come to help him, but he remained at his post until he was officially relieved of duty. The police car ride felt like the longest journey of Marcus's life. He watched London pass by through the window, but now everything looked different. The city that had seemed so magical just hours before now felt cold and unwelcoming. Marcus began to realize that he wasn't in his small hometown anymore, where everyone knew him and forgave his silly pranks. At the police station, Marcus was put in a small gray room with just a table and 2 chairs. The walls were bare, and the only sound was the ticking of a clock that seemed to get louder with each passing minute. Marcus sat alone for what felt like hours, thinking about what he had done and wondering what would happen to him. Finally, a police detective came into the room. She was a middle-aged woman with kind but serious eyes. She sat across from Marcus and opened a file folder filled with papers. Marcus could see his name written on the top of the documents. "Mr. Thompson," the detective began, "do you understand the seriousness of what you've done today?" Marcus wanted to say that it was just a harmless prank, but something in the detective's voice made him stay quiet and listen instead. The detective explained that the Royal Guards were not just tourist attractions or actors in costumes. They were real soldiers with important duties. The guard that Marcus had targeted was a 19-year-old young man named James, who came from a military family and had worked incredibly hard to earn his position at Buckingham Palace. James has been standing guard at the palace for only 3 months, the detective continued. This is his dream job and he takes it very seriously. When you threw that hot sauce at him, you didn't just stain his uniform. You disrespected everything he stands for and works toward every day. Marcus felt a heavy weight settling in his stomach. He had never thought about the guard as a real person with feelings, dreams, and a family who was proud of him. In Marcus's mind, the guard had just been part of the tourist experience, like a statue or a building. The detective continued to explain the consequences of Marcus's actions. She told him that he could face serious charges, including assault on a government official and vandalism of government property. The punishment could include jail time, a heavy fine, and being banned from entering the United Kingdom ever again. Marcus felt his world crashing down around him. What had started as a silly vacation prank was turning into a nightmare that could ruin his entire future. He thought about his parents back home in Ohio, who'd been so proud of him for saving money for this trip. He imagined having to call them from jail to explain what he had done. However, the detective said, there might be another way to handle this situation. Marcus looked up hopefully, waiting to hear what she meant. The detective explained that the Royal Guard, James, had made an unusual request. Instead of pressing full charges, James wanted to meet with Marcus face to face. James believes that you might learn more from understanding his perspective than you would from sitting in a jail cell, the detective said. He's willing to give you a chance to make this right, but only if you're truly sorry for what you've done and willing to listen to what he has to say. Marcus nodded eagerly, grateful for any chance to fix the terrible mistake he had made. The detective arranged for the meeting to take place the next day at the palace barracks, where the guards lived and trained when they weren't on duty. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep in his small hotel room. He kept thinking about the young guard named James and wondering what kind of person would be willing to forgive someone who had humiliated him in front of hundreds of tourists. Marcus realized he had never really thought about how his pranks affected other people before. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the palace barracks feeling nervous and ashamed. The building was impressive and serious-looking, with tall stone walls and guards standing at every entrance. Marcus was escorted through several hallways lined with portraits of former guards and military heroes. Finally, Marcus was brought into a simple room where James was waiting for him. The young guard was no longer wearing his ceremonial red uniform and tall black hat. Instead, he was dressed in regular military clothing, and Marcus could see that he was just a normal young man, not much different from himself. James stood up when Marcus entered the room, and Marcus was surprised to see that the guard was actually shorter than him and had a friendly face. But when James looked at Marcus, his expression was serious and disappointed rather than angry. "Hello, Marcus," James said in a quiet voice. "I asked to meet with you because I want you to understand something important. What you did yesterday wasn't just a prank to me. It was an attack on everything I believe in and everything I've worked for." Marcus started to apologize, but James held up his hand to stop him. "Please, let me finish first," James said. "I need you to hear my story before you say anything." James sat down and began to tell Marcus his story. He explained that he came from a small village in northern England, where his father had been a soldier and his grandfather before him. Military service was a family tradition that meant everything to his family. "When I was growing up, we didn't have much money," James said. "My father was injured in the war and couldn't work regular jobs anymore. My mother cleaned houses to help pay the bills. But my parents always told me that if I worked hard and stayed disciplined, I could make something of myself through military service." James explained that he had studied and trained for 3 years to qualify for the position at Buckingham Palace. He had to pass difficult physical tests, learn complex military procedures, and prove that he could stand perfectly still for hours at a time, no matter what happened around him. "Do you know how many young soldiers apply for this position every year?" James asked Marcus. "Thousands. Only a few dozen are chosen. When I got selected, it was the proudest moment of my life." My parents cried with joy and my whole village celebrated. Marcus listened carefully as James continued his story. The young guard explained that his position wasn't just about standing still and looking impressive for tourists. The royal guards were real soldiers with real responsibilities. They protected important government buildings and officials. They underwent regular military training and could be called to serve in dangerous situations around the world. When you threw that hot sauce at me yesterday, hundreds of people were watching, James said. Many of them took pictures and videos. Those images are probably all over the internet now. My family, my friends, and my commanding officers all saw me being humiliated. James pulled out his phone and showed Marcus several social media posts featuring pictures of the incident. Marcus saw himself grinning stupidly as he squeezed the hot sauce bottle, while James stood covered in the red liquid, maintaining his professional composure even while being attacked. The worst part wasn't the hot sauce burning my hands, James continued. The worst part was feeling helpless. I couldn't defend myself or respond because that would mean abandoning my duty. I had to stand there and take it while you treated me like I wasn't even human. Marcus felt sick to his stomach as he looked at the pictures. In every image, he looked like a bully picking on someone who couldn't fight back. He had never seen himself that way before, but now he couldn't deny what was right in front of him. James told Marcus that several of his fellow guards had suggested that he should press full charges and make sure Marcus went to jail. They felt that letting tourists get away with disrespectful behavior would encourage others to do similar things. But I kept thinking about why you might have done it, James said. I realized that you probably never thought of me as a real person, with feelings and responsibilities. You saw me as some kind of entertainment, like a robot or a statue that exists just for your amusement. Marcus finally found his voice and tried to apologize, but James wasn't finished yet. The young guard had one more thing to show Marcus that would change everything about how he understood the situation. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded letter. The paper looked old and worn, as if it had been read many times. He handed it to Marcus carefully, as if it was made of gold. This letter is from my little brother Tommy, James said softly. He's 8 years old and he wrote it to me last week. I want you to read it out loud. Marcus took the letter with shaking hands and unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was that of a child, with some words spelled wrong but full of love and excitement. Marcus began to read. Dear James, I am so proud that you are a royal guard. All my friends at school think you are the coolest brother in the world. I told my teacher that you protect the Queen and she said that makes you a hero. I want to be just like you when I grow up. I practice standing still like you do. Mom says when I visit London next month I can watch you at work. I can't wait to see you in your red uniform and tall hat. You are my hero. Love, Tommy. Marcus's voice cracked as he finished reading the letter. He looked up at James and saw tears in the young guard's eyes. The full weight of what Marcus had done finally hit him like a punch to the stomach. Tommy is coming to visit me next month, James said quietly. He's going to see all those pictures and videos of his hero brother being covered in hot sauce while some tourist laughs at him. How do I explain to an 8-year-old boy that sometimes people do cruel things just because they think it's funny? Marcus felt tears starting to roll down his own cheeks. He had never imagined that his stupid prank would hurt an innocent child who looked up to his big brother. He thought about his own younger sister back home and how he would feel if someone humiliated him in front of her. I'm so sorry, Marcus whispered. I never thought. I didn't realize. I was so stupid and selfish. James nodded and wiped his eyes. I know you're sorry now, Marcus. But sorry isn't enough to fix what's already been done. Those pictures will be on the internet forever. My little brother will probably see them someday, and so will his friends. For several minutes, both young men sat in silence. Marcus felt ashamed and heartbroken, while James seemed tired and sad. Finally, James spoke again, but this time his voice was a little kinder. I've been thinking about this all night, James said. I could send you to jail, and maybe that would make me feel better for a while, but it wouldn't teach you anything important, and it wouldn't help my brother understand why some people are cruel to others. James stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the courtyard where other guards were training. Marcus watched him and waited to hear what would happen next. I want to offer you a choice, James said, turning back to Marcus. You can face the legal consequences of what you did, or you can help me with something that might actually make a difference." James explained his proposal to Marcus. Instead of pressing charges, he wanted Marcus to spend the rest of his vacation learning about the real lives and responsibilities of the Royal Guards. Marcus would wake up early every morning and participate in their training exercises. He would learn about their history, their duties, and the discipline required for their job. "Most importantly," James said, "I want you to make a video message for my brother Tommy and for other children who might see those pictures of what you did to me. I want you to explain why what you did was wrong and help them understand that the guards are real people who deserve respect." Marcus agreed immediately. He was grateful for the chance to make things right instead of just being punished. Over the next 5 days, Marcus experienced a completely different side of London and learned lessons he would never forget. Every morning at 5 o'clock, Marcus joined the guards for their physical training. He ran with them through the streets of London, did push-ups and sit-ups until his muscles ached, and learned to march in perfect formation. The training was harder than anything Marcus had ever done, and he gained deep respect for the strength and dedication required to be a royal guard. The guards taught Marcus about their history, dating back hundreds of years. He learned that many guards had died protecting the royal family and the government. He visited memorials dedicated to guards who had given their lives in wars and conflicts around the world. Marcus began to understand that he had attacked not just James, but a tradition of honor and sacrifice that went back centuries. James took Marcus to visit injured veterans who had served as royal guards. These brave men and women had been wounded in battle while protecting their country. They shared their stories with Marcus and helped him understand the true meaning of duty and service. On his final day in London, Marcus recorded a heartfelt video message. He looked directly into the camera and spoke from his heart, apologizing for his actions and explaining what he had learned. He talked about James as a real person with a family who loved him and a little brother who looked up to him. "I thought I was just playing a harmless prank," Marcus said in the video. "But I was really bullying someone who couldn't fight back. The Royal Guards aren't toys or entertainment for tourists. They're real people with important jobs, and they deserve our respect and gratitude." Marcus sent the video to James, who shared it with his family. Tommy watched it and told his big brother that he forgave the mean man who had hurt him. The video also found its way onto social media, where many people shared it and praised Marcus for taking responsibility for his actions. When Marcus returned to Ohio, he was a changed person. He still liked to make people laugh, but he never again played pranks that could hurt or embarrass others. He got a job working with veterans at a local hospital, helping them with daily activities and listening to their stories. 6 months later, Marcus received a letter from London. It was from Tommy, James's little brother. The 8-year-old had drawn a picture of Marcus and James shaking hands, with the words, "Thank you for saying sorry," written in crayon at the bottom. Marcus framed the letter and hung it in his bedroom, where he saw it every morning when he woke up. It reminded him of the most important lesson he had ever learned, that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they are or what job they do. The hot sauce incident had taught Marcus that true maturity means thinking about how your actions affect others before you act, not just saying sorry afterward.